Hey there, guys. It's Metro. I get back from a baseball game, been gone since noon. It's like 8 o'clock, and first thing I do, come here to record this. I already got a video out today. This takes the precedence here. So, no idea what I'm about to read. I heard a couple things. It's not totally going to be the first time I read some of this, but I'm going to try to read all of this and give my thoughts on it. It seems like probably the biggest changes they've ever made. Dragonflight Season 4, we've experimented with our existing dungeon difficulty progression to offer additional endgame options for players who enjoy more methodical dungeon gameplay. This updated dungeon difficulty progression is also an opportunity for players that do enjoy Mythic Keystones to have a place to build mastery over dungeons before the pressure of a timer kicks in. You can read more about those changes in depth here. No, we already made a video on that. Thank you anyway. We plan to continue this model of progression into the War Within. Great. That's good. So I was worried because I was thinking if they're making big changes, they're probably undoing those changes. Remember, one of my big concerns is what happens when the zeros are not the same dungeons that they have for the Mythic Plus dungeons. We'll see if they address that here. Normal. This difficulty doesn't fucking matter. It shouldn't be in the game anymore. The difficulty always includes our 8 War Within dungeons. Little teaser, that might be them addressing what we're about to talk about. Heroic. The tuning and rewards of difficulty are increasing to be equivalent to a baseline Mythic Zero dungeon in the previous system. You mean in the previous system now, or are we talking about in Season 4, Season 3? I can't tell. New mechanics and other adjustments for Mythic will not be present in this difficulty. Is this just the same? Starting with this remains a queuable experience, and starting with Season 1 of War Within, Heroic Dungeon will feature our roster of seasonal dungeons. So yes, it kind of confirms it here, but we'll keep reading. There is no heroic anymore. People were talking about that the other day. There was some miscommunication, I think, on what was happening there. But this is what I assumed was happening the whole time, is they were going to make heroics a part of the seasonal rotation, and they were not going to be present on launch. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm very concerned with what's actually going to be present on launch, especially with a 4-day leeway on the one side. We're going to have 2 weeks and 4 days, and it doesn't seem like there's any content. But we'll talk about that in a different video. Mythic. The tuning and rewards of this difficulty are increasing to be equivalent to a 10 dungeon. This is exactly how it was. So I think these are not changes. We'll just skip to this part. Starting with Season 1 of the War Within, Mythic difficulty will feature our roster of seasonal dungeons. Good. They're listening. I mean, they're basically just doing exactly what I wanted them to do the whole time in all of these changes, and that's awesome. Mythic difficulty will be unavailable until War Within Season 1 begins. So they don't say that for Heroic, which makes me think maybe they will have the Heroic versions of the other dungeons for the first 2 weeks. Mythic difficulty will now have a daily lockout. Whoa. That's a ridiculous change. A lot of people complain about this. This probably is a knee-jerk reaction. It's probably not a good decision. Mythic difficulty gives a lot of loot, guys. A lot of people complain about not being able to do them. Like they say, oh, I only have time for the mythics and I don't get any loot because I can't spam them. That's an oxymoron. If you only have time to do 8 dungeons a week, these give more loot than Mythic Plus does. This is the better solution. You're doing the thing that is actually giving you more rewards. I don't know how it works, but I've seen people get 2 items off one boss. So anyway, the seasonal dungeon roster of Heroic, Mythic, and Mythic Plus in War Within includes the following dungeons. So we already reacted to all these. Siege of Brass, unfortunately, still coming. Grim Patrol 2, we'll see what happens. They're also doing they're also doing Mythic Plus testing on Thursday. So that is what we'll be streaming on Thursday. Pay attention and stay tuned. I won't be able to stream Friday, unfortunately. Anyway, Mythic Plus, the Mythic Keystone system will carry forward changes from Dragonflight Season 4 with updates to the position of the affixes in the system and updated affix buckets. Okay, so here's the big thing. I could read this, but I don't want this video to be like 30 minutes. We intend to better align rewards and difficulty increases in Mythic Plus system by updating the introduction of points of affixes in Season 1 with War Within. This is a great change right here. This needs to happen. It's ridiculous that the final affix is not till 10. That's a bad decision on their part. But yeah, they're fixing it. A 4 it says a new set of passive affixes. So this is what the bulk of the video is going to be about. Dungeon ratings should be equivalent to what they represent in the current system. There should be a smaller range of keystone levels to find groups for and more meaningful progression between each level. And that's already how it is now. So I can't imagine much is changing. A 5, this is basically, they're like adding, they're like basically adding the same stuff from Season 4 into this post and acting like it's new. Or maybe I'm misreading it or something, but a 5 should be as hard as a 15 and a 10 should be as hard as a But like you're still talking about previous Mythic Plus season. That means the season 3 system, right? I don't know why they're wording it this way. They have a lot of weird miscommunicational like errors here. I don't know. That's not even a word, but anyway. Okay, affixes. Here we go. Big talk here. Before we dive into the specifics of the new affixes, we'd like to outline our goals and the purpose these affixes serve. Our overarching goal is to minimize the mechanical overlap between affixes and dungeon trash design in the current 4 bucket. We aim to achieve this through a more passive approach, focusing on the following objectives. Shift the source of challenge to the dungeon itself by simplifying affix design and emphasizing creature abilities. And at first, I would say, like, you already did this, but they're going to do it even better. Reduce visual noise, nameplate clutter, and the cognitive load on players during trash combat. Don't have no idea how that would impact. Like, what are you talking about with affixes? That's all a dungeon problem, right? Like, what is that comment? You're talking about mechanics on trash or actual affixes? Because what kind of visual noise and nameplate clutter is there for affixes? What you're talking about? What's the name of the mob? Afflicted? You're talking about afflicted? Like what? I don't understand what that means. Allow for varied and context-specific gameplay decisions depending on the dungeon they are applied to. Context-specific gameplay decisions. That's a very flowery word that probably means nothing. Realistically, people are just going to brute force it because people are not interested in actually getting better at the dungeons. They will just take the easiest route out, and we'll talk about why that's a problem in the future here. Additionally, these affixes will include a positive effect, which I love. I love this. The aim of these positive effects is to highlight different damage types each week, allowing each specialization additional opportunities to excel during the season. This is the biggest change they've ever made. I'm just going to go ahead and say this because I already read these, and this is the biggest change they've ever made. It is basically like if you thought the seasonal affixes were powerful, this is the biggest change they've ever made. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's probably going to be looked at as pretty passive. Maybe people won't love it like they loved, some of the seasonal affixes, but there's no way any of the previous affixes would be bigger than a 10% net damage buff over the course of a dungeon. So this is really, really, really cool. And we'll talk about what it might have the implications for pugging. Additionally, these affixes, okay with that. The affix should feel like a bonus, offering an advantage for different damage profiles each week without being essential to complete a dungeon. And that won't happen, of course. That's, I mean, to say that out loud, it's like, oh man, you guys are so naive. You're so naive. Of course, people are gonna. I mean, dude, how many conversations have we had about this over the years? I can't play the game unless I'm this thing. But it's a good solution to that thought process, to that game 2 bullshit. Players will have an opportunity to flex towards different talents, gearing options, and consumables to capitalize on these new effects, which I don't see how. Like, we'll talk about it in a second here, but I don't see how. Okay, so we have 4 new affixes. Actually, before we start reading those, I'm going to read this first, because this part is more interesting, in my opinion. With our new passive affix bucket set to replace the 4 affix bucket, the following affixes will be retired. Afflicted, Incorporeal, Entangling, Storming, and Volcanic. So 2 of the easiest affixes right now are these 2. Storming is probably looked at as very easy, but it can be difficult. And these 2 are without question the hardest for the pug world. So these are all a lot of affixes that are definitely, they're going to be missed, I think. But we'll see. To match the number of affixes in our level 4 affix bucket and align with our goals, we will be retiring the Spiteful affix for Season 1. And then just getting rid of Spiteful, so there's only 4 rotational weeks now. We are still experimenting with how these affixes fit in with our updates, Tyrannical and Fortified. Oh. We believe these changes will offer a refreshing experience at all levels each season and redefine how Mythic Plus affix systems influence gameplay. We look forward to your feedback and discussion on these topics, and we'll see you in dungeons. Okay. I really want to get started on talking about some of this stuff, but we will read these individually as well now. Reckless. Oh my god, he's a Reckless. Great song. Anyway, non-boss enemies without mana ignore 20% armor with their attacks, but their armor is reduced by 30%, and they take 10% increased arcane damage. Armor reduced by 30%, take 10% increased damage. That is a lot of damage. I mean, there's not a lot of classes that do full arcane damage, though, right? We have Balance Druid, we have Arcane Mage, I guess a little bit of Marksman Hunter. What else? Evoker? Does Evoker do? I don't actually know. I don't know what classes do arcane damage. You guys tell me down below. This is not a lot of classes, though, but I think that's why they put the armor reduce thing as well, which is pretty. This one's probably going to be the easiest one because ignore 20% armor with their attacks. We don't have that. That's blood DK, so who cares about that? Not non-boss enemies without mana inflict physical damage to their attackers when attacked, but take 10% increase holy and shadow damage. That's a crazy one. That one's going to be hard. That sounds like going to be the hardest one. Because again, there's no holy, like who does holy damage? Healers? So it's just shadow. So we have Shadow Priest, Warlock, I guess Blood DK. Blood DK does a lot of shadow damage. Probably Death Knight in general. But yeah. Non-boss enemies. This is I'm not even reading these. Reckless, Thorned, and Attuned. Non-boss enemies with mana inflict with mana. Oh, okay. Inflict 20% increased magic damage, but take 10% increased nature damage and 30% increased damage from bleed effects. That's a really weird one because this one is now buffing the casters only. I mean, I guess in this recent seasons, there's been a lot of casters, but I feel like this one's probably going to be very easy. Perhaps again, not a very big. I mean, I don't really feel like these ones have like. There's not a lot of classes that do these things. Nature damage is like, again, who? Balance Druid? I don't. Most of their damage is arcane, isn't it? I mean, all their AOE is arcane, right? Who does nature? You guys tell me. I mean, you guys make a little list. Non-boss enemies with mana have a 30% increased haste, but take 10% increased frost and fire. And this is going to be the one that is the most impactful. Because first of all, haste, I don't know if that means it's going to like cast spells quicker and stuff, but I assume that's what that means. They're going to cast the spells way quicker, meaning we're going to have way harder time interrupting stuff. That's usually what haste would mean for a player. 30% harder time interrupting. That's going to be wild. But of course, frost and fire, this is the predominant. I feel like this is the one that is done by the most specs, right? Like I know for sure, Evoker, obviously Mage, Death Knight, Frost Death Knight, Demon Hunter, fire damage. It just depends on things like Chaos. Like when you have divine damage, that assume that counts as holy. Chaos damage, I assume that counts as fire. You know, Warlock, Rain of Fire. I could probably even come up with more if I wasn't so silly and didn't know anything about the game I play. But yeah, no, that's it. So these four are basically a seasonal fix type buff. Very passive, but what isn't passive, it's going to encourage you to pick certain specs. So I don't know. I didn't get a chance to read my Discord, but a lot of comments were left there. Jix messaged me. I'm going to tell you what he said because I'm actually eager to hear what you guys say. Blizzard threw a knife at puggers. Hope you saw the post. I was just getting off the road and going to dinner. TGI Fridays, by the way. Love it. Blizzard removed 6 affixes, put 4 affixes in, and those 4 affixes are going to ruin pugging. Gives people more reason to exclude others, and Ogle seemed like a good old dream if this goes live. So I think what his point is that now there's going to be basically like locked in metas. And I think that's not what Blizzard wants, but that's probably what's going to happen. But I like this. I actually like this. As the tank, I like this. Because frankly, guys, I'm not gonna lie to you right now. Like I'm getting very bored with DPS being so flavor of the month, re-rolling, acting like they're God's gift to the dungeon. It's quite boring. It's annoying. It's dumb. It's whatever you want to say. Toxic. I don't. It's just boring. I'm so sick of doing every key with a Shadow Priest. All of them fucking suck, and they all have attitudes. It's just really boring. It's just not like it doesn't feel like it changes every week. And for a long time, I talked about why they'll never remove affixes because it's not, well, one of the main reasons I said was because they want them to be challenging. Okay, so this is still challenging, I'm sure, but now it's challenging for a new reason because now not only is it challenging to potentially survive, but it's also going to be challenging to do. You have to maximize this, right? You could act like you don't, but this is kind of dumb and it's kind of genius. It's like actually really like an idiot savant take. You know what I mean? It's so basic. It's so straightforward. It's so kind of stupid that it's genius. And I don't, I'd love to hear more thoughts on this, but I don't agree with what Jix said. I think this is going to actually really make pugging a lot more interesting. Now, if you pug as a flavor of the month reroller DPS who never wants to do your own keystone, probably going to fucking suck for you. Yeah, because guess what? If you play Shadow Priest on the 3 weeks that don't have the Shadow buff, you're going to do 10% less damage. You know what I mean? And potentially, you know, depending on what happens with the different utility kits, it may also impact that way. Like, we're talking about just damage right now, but there's also, you know, physical damage to their attackers when attacked. That sounds like everybody's going to take a ton of damage. So guess what? Now we want groups that have maybe more armor. Maybe we want groups that have off healing and things like this, you know? So there's a lot to consider here. But they explicitly say that we want it to be more passive and we want it to feel like a bonus, offering an advantage for different damage profiles each week. And it also says opportunity to flex towards different talents. Okay, well, I can't do arcane damage as a blood DK. Well, that's a bad example because that one's also the armor one. I can't do bleed effects and nature damage as a blood DK. So what the hell are you talking about? How am I going to flex towards different talents and gearing options? You better get good talents. You better get good trinkets in Mythic Plus. That's all I could say. Put good trinkets in the Mythic Plus dungeons. Maybe make some that do different types of damage. You know, give us a couple options here. That'd be awesome. But if it's the same nonsense with trinkets, I don't know what they're talking about. Like what opportunity do 90% of the classes have? Other than mage. And even mage is not a great example because one of them is both frost and fire. But like what 3 DPS spec options are there? That's the only thing I could think of, right? It's not like a fire mage can suddenly start taking arcane damage while playing fire. That doesn't exist, right? I mean, maybe the new hero talents will offer some of that. I guess I didn't think about that. The hero talents might. Yeah, because is there gonna be bleeds with Sandland? This is actually, now I hadn't fully thought about that. A little bit of a half-baked reaction on that front. Maybe the hero talents will offer me some way to do nature damage. I doubt it though. I don't think so. But yes, I do think we do Death Frost damage. Is that the type with Deathbringer? I think it is Death Frost, which should count as frost, right? I don't know. This is crazy. Probably the biggest changes I've ever made. You know, Blizzard said they wanted to do a great affix revisit. That was at the end of BFA. It took them this long to do it. This is not, like, I actually can't even say one way or the other. Like, it's just wild. It's just insane. Like, I can't imagine what things are going to look like. Jix is right to some degree. Like, people are going to try to min-max this to the nth degree, even though they won't need to. And it's going to be wild. Like, I'm more eager to see what it looks like because it's probably going to be hilarious, where you're going to take like 3 arcane mages and shit. You know what I mean? People are going to take like totally suboptimal comps. This solves that, dude. But how does it proliferate at the top end? Like, do you now need a balanced comp? Do you need an arcane damage dealer, a shadow damage dealer, and a nature damage dealer? You can't have all 4, right? So I don't know. This is going to be really, really, really weird. And all I can say is props to Blizzard for taking a stab in the dark at this. Good work, man. You did it with fucking Plunderstorm. You did it with Mob Remix. Thank you for trying new things. Not what I would have recommended. No idea if this is going to work out. Like I said, it's so bizarre that I can't even really render an opinion on it right now. But all I know is pugging in Season 1 of The War Within is going to be insane. Please record your runs and think about me when you're doing them, because this is going to be nuts. People are going to freak out just because a lot of people probably won't recognize, oh, why is this guy top damage and this kind of shit? You know what I mean? This is going to be such a different experience. And I think the pug world is actually going to be the ones who benefit from it the most. We just talked about this actually in the video I uploaded today because, well, I didn't. I cut it out. I had a little bit of a discussion about why pugging can be better than group progression because you can choose who you play with. So if you are a player, you can fill your weaknesses in with other players. So if you play a rogue on a damage, holy and shadow damage, well, I think rogue does shadow damage, but anyway, play a rogue on the frost fire one. Well, guess what? Now your other 2 picks are Frost Death Knight and Fire Mage. You know what I mean? Like, this is a good thing. It increases build diversity. It hopefully makes people care more about who they actually invite and not just taking people with the highest score. I'm fucking excited. This is actually really exciting just because of how nuts it sounds. Will it work? Will it be competitive? Will it be balanced? I can't see how it will be. It's a bad idea, but it's a great idea at the same time. That's all I got to say. Please leave your comments on this. I know a lot of people probably won't see this because I uploaded 2 videos. So like pretty much if anybody watched the first video, they usually don't get a second notification in one day. But this is just too crazy. I needed to get my thoughts out before the stream. I will be streaming today and tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Thursday, it sounds like we'll be on the Mythic on the PTR. I just want to read this post though, because our man Grawl got featured on this. As Yummy TV points out, this seems to be in line with Blizzard's philosophy on affixes, trying to get different classes to be incentivized from week to week. The previous affixes did not do this and actually incentivized the meta even more. Disagree with that. That is definitely not correct. People just don't care. People just don't care. If you looked at times when Priest wasn't meta, it would be a better example. Because like things like busting, like where you could master spell, people brought Priests. It did work. It just people don't care because they're too blinded by the top. And the players at the top, they don't have the luxury of changing their specs week to week. You know what I mean? Anyway, so this has a chance of doing this with incentivizing certain specs each week. Since certain specs spend more than 50% of their time not on a week of their choice, I think it is possible that players will feel excited about that week. That's an interesting way to put it, actually. I did not think about that. I hate being the guy, but I think the damage, vulnerabilities, and Mythic Plus will be good for pugging. Everyone already being meta slaves hard and only invites the best classes. This will at least give you an excuse to invite something new when you can't find a fifth. Not saying I'm happy with everything. And he's right. He's totally right. This is going to encourage you to invite off meta picks. But I think that is an outdated mentality. There's not going to be such a thing as off meta anymore. In the pug world, it's going to be meta based on the week. There's going to be a new meta. It's going to be a revolving door meta. And I'm fucking here for it, man. So let me know. It's going to be wild. Let me know what you guys think. Otherwise, stay tuned. We got all kinds of stuff going on this week.